4.2-2 The importance of disclosing agency relationships. Building upon the previous section on how agency relationships are created, it is essential to understand that early and transparent disclosure of agency relationships is one of the most critical steps a real estate professional can take to maintain compliance and uphold fiduciary integrity. In Arizona, agency disclosure is not simply a best practice. It is a legal and ethical obligation designed to protect both the consumer and the licensee from confusion, misrepresentation, or unintentional creation of implied agency. As established under Commissioner's Rule R-4-28-1101F, a licensee must disclose in writing, at the first substantive contact with any party to a transaction whom they represent. This means that before discussing confidential information, motivation, financial ability, or making recommendations that could be interpreted as advocacy, the agent must identify their role clearly. This requirement stems from Arizona's broader goal to ensure transparency in all real estate dealings and to prevent consumers from being misled about whom the licensee truly represents. An agency disclosure clarifies whether the agent represents the buyer, the seller, both parties under limited representation, or neither. This is typically done using the Real Estate Agency Disclosure and Election (READE) form developed by the Arizona Association of Realtors. This form requires all parties to acknowledge their understanding of representation before any material conversation about the transaction takes place. By presenting this form early, ideally during the first meaningful interaction, the agent eliminates any confusion about fiduciary obligations. The importance of early disclosure becomes especially apparent when considering the risks of implied agency. As discussed in the prior section, implied agency can occur when a licensee's conduct leads a consumer to reasonably believe that the agent is representing them, even without a written agreement. When agents fail to disclose representation early, buyers and sellers may assume loyalty and confidentiality that do not legally exist. This creates a dangerous gray area, where the agent may unintentionally owe fiduciary duties to multiple parties without informed consent, leading to potential violations of ARS Section 322153A3, which prohibits dishonest or negligent conduct in the practice of real estate. Consider the following scenario. A real estate agent hosts an open house for their seller client. A buyer visits, expresses interest, and begins asking questions about offer prices and seller motivation. If the agent offers advice such as, "You should start a little lower," the seller might negotiate. The buyer may believe the agent is acting in their interest. Without clarifying that they represent the seller, the agent has potentially created an implied agency relationship with the buyer. While already representing the seller, this creates an unintentional dual agency situation, violating the disclosure and consent requirements under R-4-28-1101F. Early disclosure of representation would have prevented this misunderstanding. Another example can be found in Arizona case law. In Barnes v. Lopez, 1985, the court reaffirmed that agency relationships are based on trust and reliance. When a licensee's actions create the appearance of advocacy or fiduciary care without formal consent, the courts may find that an agency relationship existed, even if no written contract was signed. This case highlights why licensees must provide written disclosure early and ensure that consumers understand their representation status. Courts and the Arizona Department of Real Estate, ADRE, have consistently disciplined licensees who fail to make this disclosure at the appropriate time. The timing of disclosure is crucial. The term first substantive contact refers to the point at which a discussion between a licensee and a consumer goes beyond casual conversation and begins to involve confidential or decision-making information. This may include discussing price, terms, financial qualifications, or the motivations of either party. For example, a phone call inquiry about showing a property may not yet require disclosure. But once the discussion moves into questions like, do you think the seller would accept less? Or should I offer full price? The licensee must stop and present the agency disclosure form before proceeding. By disclosing representation early, a licensee establishes trust and transparency. It protects the client's interests and ensures compliance with both ARS Section 32-2-153A3 and R4-28-1101F. It also protects the licensee from unintentional violations that could result in disciplinary action, license suspension, or civil liability. Furthermore, early disclosure creates a professional tone for the transaction, showing that the agent values honesty, ethics, and clarity in all dealings. From a brokerage management standpoint, designated brokers are responsible under R4-28-1103 to ensure that their salespeople make timely and proper agency disclosures. Failure to do so can expose the broker to liability as well, emphasizing that disclosure is not merely a formality. It is a fundamental part of the supervision and control required by Arizona law. In practice, seasoned professionals make it a habit to begin every client conversation by clarifying their role. A simple statement such as, "Before we go any further, I want to make sure you understand who I represent," followed by the read form, sets clear expectations and eliminates confusion. By doing this, agents protect both themselves and their clients from the costly implications of implied agency review summary. Early disclosure of agency relationships is required under R4-28-1101F and is one of the most effective safeguards against implied agency. By presenting written disclosure at the first substantive contact, agents ensure that consumers understand whom they represent, avoid conflicts of interest, and maintain compliance with ARS Section 32-2-153A3. The read form serves as the primary tool for disclosure, and its timely use establishes trust, protects fiduciary duties, and prevents unintentional dual agency courts, such as in Barnes v. Lopez, have affirmed that agency can be inferred through conduct, making early written disclosure the key to preventing liability. Discussion: why must disclosure of agency relationships occur at the first substantive contact? Answer: because it ensures that all parties understand who the agent represents before confidential information is exchanged, preventing implied agency and maintaining transparency. What could happen if an agent fails to disclose representation early in a transaction? Answer: the agent could unintentionally create an implied agency relationship, resulting in dual representation without consent, which violates R4-28-1101F and ARS Section 32-2153A3. How does the read form protect both the client and the licensee? Answer: it documents disclosure, defines representation, and prevents misunderstanding or unintentional creation of agency obligations. Closing remarks. Early disclosure is the cornerstone of ethical real estate practice in Arizona. By clarifying representation at the outset, agents set the tone for professionalism, avoid implied agency, and build trust with clients. This simple yet vital step protects the integrity of the transaction, upholds the law, and ensures that fiduciary duties are clear, documented, and enforceable. In an industry built on relationships and trust, the earliest and most transparent disclosures are always the strongest defense against confusion and liability.